From the Alvin and Rosalie Sarachek studio, PBS Kansas presents Positively Kansas.
It's time for Positively Kansas. Coming up, the beauty of nature inspires amazing art. See what happens when the great outdoors becomes an artist's studio. Also, we go to Haysville, where they love celebrating the holidays as a community. Then we'll learn what makes this historic barn so unusual and why it's a popular attraction for country and city folks alike. I'm Sierra Scott. Those stories in our Kansas Wild Edge report are all queued up and ready to roll. Another edition of Positively Kansas starts right now. From the Mona Lisa to Whistler's mother, it's always an important question. What inspired the artists? For several artists in Wichita recently, the inspiration was their surroundings. Chris Frank gives us a look.
One doesn't really need to have a great reason to take a stroll along a trail at the Great Plains Nature Center in northeast Wichita, but that's especially so on a pleasantly mild late afternoon, early evening in mid-October when the day's wind has lessened along with the temperature. Yet on this fall day, the center's Quail Trail is busy with activity.
Tonight at the Great Plains Nature Center, we have what's called Art on the Trail. And so Art on the Trail is just an opportunity for local artists to come out and fill our Quail Trail with different art, and then the community is invited out to come and enjoy it.
Dara Jewell says there are 25 artists set up along the trail. Those include stone carving, plein air sewing, painting, sketching, wood burning artists. So a variety of artistic mediums are represented along the trail.
We really just wanted to open up to different mediums and kind of create a space where people can come out and just feel free to interpret nature the way that they would like to and show the community what that can look like.
How are y'all today? Good, good. I'm doing pretty good, thank you.
Local artist Trey Gresham incorporates several Kansas and Wichita-specific symbols in his painting. Those symbols are painted on top of his artistic interpretation of the location along the park trail he's at.
You got the bison and the bee and a little bit of Kansas.
My inspiration came from Drew Struzan, the guy that did the Indiana Jones and Star Wars movie posters back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
Try to emulate that. He packed so much into those posters and made it look really good, so that was a nice little homage.
Good job.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Gresham has managed to get the western meadowlark, keeper of the plains, a bison, a bee, and the letter W for Wichita.
I thought about doing some an airplane on there to represent us being the air capital, but you know, who knows what's gonna look like when it's finished, so.
Well, like he indicates, these are all works in progress, subject to change with the winds of inspiration.
I got a good reason. But.
Yes.
Brushes and paint, not the only way art is put on canvases here. What's this? A sewing machine on the trail?
It's a DC powered, so I have a battery that
Oh, wow.
Melissa Long of Haysville sews art. Instead of paint, she's got different colors of thread.
I'd rather let other people define what I'm doing. I just like to enjoy it.
Bruce and Pam Van Beber surprised to see such detail in Long's sewing art.
I mean, that is so clever. I think very much in the box, and I would never have come up with something like this. And she does such a great job, and they're all different, and they're all...
Those attending like the opportunities to observe artists at work, but also the chance to interact with the artists about their techniques and inspirations.
And when did you start your project today?
I started it it must have been 4 p.m. when things started going.
And you've already come this far on a beautiful painting. That's amazing.
Yeah. I'm trying.
So the kind of art that I like to do is typically some kind of outside painting for the sake of sanity, to get myself out of the studio. But I also like to do sculpture and ink drawings and all different kinds of things. So a good variety to keep things interesting.
Events like this keep people returning to the 240-acre center with all its twisting trails, wetlands, and wildlife. But Art on the Trail also attracts new visitors.
I just love seeing all the artists. I love the nature. It's kind of everything that I love. So, I haven't been here before. I've never been to the park before. So I thought this was a good event to see, for the first time.
We are hopeful just to continue our mission and continue providing resources for the community, make it accessible for anybody in the community to come and learn about nature, and you're going to learn something about yourself too. It's just inevitable.
And while those attending Art on the Trail are learning about the artists and their works, the Nature Center is discovering the public's interest in this by the turnout. Because of that, we should expect to see more of these Art on the Trail events in years to come. At the Great Plains Nature Center, this is Chris Frank for Positively Kansas.
This was the second year for Art on the Trail, sponsored by Fidelity Bank. Like the song goes, there's no place like home for the holidays. Anthony Powell shows us that's especially true if you live in Haysville.
On a beautiful December evening, Christmas spirit filled the air in downtown Haysville. The city's historic district, known as the center of town, the perfect site for the Village Christmas celebration, a tradition that's been going strong for decades.
It's great. Everybody comes together, and the kids love it, the adults love it. We all just get together.
Carriage rides, horseback rides, or strolling through the marketplace where numerous vendors presented gifts and Christmas decor. There was truly something for everyone.
Well, it's time when people like to get together and participate in all these little activities like we're having today. We just got off of the wagon rides. That was interesting, my first.
For those who didn't feel like doing something specific, there were plenty of interesting sights and sounds to take in just by leisurely walking around the historic district. When it comes to getting into the spirit of the season, the folks here in Haysville sure go all out. It was just a few months ago, back in October, that we were covering the city's massive fall festival, which draws thousands of people. And now, just 2 months later, they're at it again with the Village Christmas celebration.
It's a true community spirit. Everyone gets into it. I don't care where they are. Anywhere in Haysville, you'll find it. I've never been in a town like this.
That's one of the reasons why I just love Haysville. Just I see the same people, different community events, whether it's the Village Christmas or the Fall Festival.
Meanwhile, as night fell, many folks crossed the street to Pride Park, which, like the historic district, was filled with Christmas cheer. Soon it was time for Santa himself to make an appearance.
5, 4, 3.
He eventually joined Mayor Kessler for the ceremonial lighting of the city tree. Afterwards, there was music.
To be the child that Mary will hold.
As Pride Park lit up the darkness with breathtaking displays of the season. Back at the historic district, there was a similar spectacular night scene. No matter where you are in downtown Haysville this time of year, you come away saying, this is a city that defines being in the Christmas spirit. In Haysville, I'm Anthony Powell for Positively Kansas.
No matter the time of year, capturing up-close images of wildlife is challenging. In this week's Kansas Wild Edge Report, Mike Blair shows us how he does it.
If you love to watch wildlife, you owe it to yourself to sit in a blind. True, at the right place and time, you can get spectacular sightings from the comfort of your car. But you'll never see the relaxed natural movements of wild animals that aren't alerted to your presence. A pop-up blind can be bought for less than $100, and you can leave it out in all weather. Put some corn or other food close by, and wildlife will be drawn like a magnet. I constantly use blinds for wildlife photography, and here in a woodland setting, you'll see what came close in just a few hours one day. I got into the blind before daylight to avoid scaring animals that show up early for breakfast, and it didn't take long for deer to appear. They came from every direction, each stopping for a few minutes to eat before moving on. Pretty soon, a raccoon showed up, fresh off the night shift and ready to den up for the day. He didn't even stop for a bite before he left. Morning light came up and autumn leaves fell in the breeze. A banded Argiope spider roused in the warming air. Squirrels leisurely worked through the treetops until reaching a treasure trove of goodies. Another buck came by, dropping his nose to check for the scent of does before moving on. All this happened in just 3 hours. But add a few days and it was even better. Game birds found the grain. A surprise covey of quail showed up, delightful since these wild game birds are seldom observed while relaxed and feeding. And once onto the free food, they would come back again and again in all kinds of weather. The same was true for wild turkeys. And not just any turkeys, big, wary gobblers with long spurs and beards and showy fans. When sunlight hit their iridescent feathers, spectacular colors showed. It was a great chance to see them at point-blank range, but maybe even better, the blind provided a chance to watch their normal behavior as they strutted and talked while approaching in the early morning light. Besides eating, wildlife often puts on a show around a blind. Food makes it a hangout and interactions are common. This can result in unexpected displays you'll never forget. Like these bucks good-naturedly sparring near the blind. Blinds. They're a great way to see wildlife. I'm Mike Blair for Positively Kansas.
On the other hand, if you want to get an up-close look at a barn, There's no hurry. Chances are it's not moving very fast. Jim Grayway has the story of a truly historic barn that has stayed put for over 110 years.
Before the advent of tractors, wheat farmers had to pull their plows, threshers, and wagons with draft horses. H.W. Fromey had a lot of acres on his Kiowa County farm, so he needed a lot of horses and a big barn to put them in. In 1912, he hired local builder Pat Campbell, who is believed to have consulted with Halstead architect Benton Steele to come up with a cutting-edge design.
In the late 1800s and early 1900s, there's really a big round barn building movement nationwide because they were thought to be cyclone resistant, tornado. That didn't prove to be true, but that was coming out in agricultural journals of the time in the early 1900s.
The barn is actually polygonal with 16 sides. Hay was stored above 15 stalls that ringed the perimeter. In the center, a granary where the feed was kept and then shoveled out into the stalls. This shape was considered to be a more efficient use of materials and space, but it did require great skill to build.
Supposedly, for the volume of space you got for hay storage, it cost less to build a round barn in actual dollars, lumber, than it would to build a rectangular barn. But it took a lot more labor making all these measurements and stuff to do this.
They're very much the exception because, first of all, you had to have somebody who could build them. Each one of those sections had to be built and had to come together at angles that were difficult and had to be perfectly done. It was very, very hard to do.
The June 14, 1912 edition of the Mullinville News reported that H.W. Fromey is hauling out lumber to build a new barn on his farm south of town. And when completed, Mr. Fromey will have one of the largest and best arranged barns in the county. Fromey was a self-made man. His granddaughter says he was a German immigrant who came to the United States with 50 cents in his pocket. He became one of the wealthiest farmers in this area. The barn cost him $8,000.
It's an architectural wonder of Kansas because I can't imagine trying to do this all by hand now.
Pat Campbell is believed to have done most of the carpentry work, aided by Mr. Fromey.
That's one of the most fantastic examples of carpentry, I would say, in Kansas. This is 50 feet tall. The span was 70 feet. That's very big. But these horses are very big too.
The barn accommodated 28 workhorses and one big stallion, but only for a few years. In 1916, Fromey bought his first tractor, and soon he didn't need the horses. This design just didn't work well for parking the new automated equipment, so this became strictly a hay barn. It remained a unique landmark, though, and airline pilots used it as a navigation point. But it was used less and less for farm purposes anyway.
It's always been a big deal to me, and you have no idea how many children have been conceived in this barn.
By 1960, according to this Hutch News article, the barn had become a tourist attraction. By 1987, Phyllis Burney, whose father-in-law had purchased it from the Fromeys 33 years earlier, successfully applied to get the barn on the National Register of Historic Places. But it was showing its age, as nothing much had ever been done to it.
The shingles that were put on in 1912 were still there in 1992. The floor was rotting away.
In 1993, Burney sold the barn for $1 to the Kiowa County Historical Society, which then applied for an $80,000 grant to restore it. But that grant required a $20,000 match.
And we had 6 weeks to raise it. And in a community of around 200 people, how do you do that? We contacted everyone who had ever graduated from the high school and sent out an appeal and said, do you want to save a part of your memories of the community you grew up in? And the money came in from all over the country.
The restoration was a community effort fueled by pride and respect for those from the past who had helped shape rural life through the generations. By 1995, restoration was complete, leaving 95% of the barn still original to 1912.
Structurally, it was so well designed, it's held.
And it remains a fixture on the wide open landscape along a gravel road just outside Mullinville. It's a testament to the great vision, skill, and hard work that has defined rural Kansas life for generations.
Well, that's a wrap for this week. Positively Kansas at kpts.org is our email address if you have a question or story idea. I'm Sierra Scott. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.